Welcome. Here we are, Thursday's team talk, week 2, as last week was week 1 when I started this. Went down well. Thanks for asking questions on Tuesday this week. Great questions, things that will be going through other people's heads. So well done. You went first. If you're watching this, great, awesome. If you're watching this at a different time, maybe next week you've got that question that you do want to ask, and don't be afraid to ask it. There are no silly questions. Anyway, so at the end of this one, I'm going to run over something that I've come up with people. It's not new, it's just things that I will always talk about, but I'm going to put it into let's say just a basic PDF format for people. As we're doing a lot more online stuff now, it's kind of like a guide. Has that gone off? Oh. Are we still on? I had a message then. A guide and a map for people to use, at any point when they're going through whatever they're going through, achieving their goals. You can look back and go, what am I doing? What am I not doing? And how can I start doing more of that? Okay, because we kind of forget sometimes the basics that are really, really important and essential. And we then go searching for other areas that never really work until you've created that foundation and the basics that we often talk about. So I think this will help me, help you. When it comes to health, there's 3 areas that we need to look at. That's physical, biochemical, and the emotional, mental side of things. Now, in terms of, let's say, these 10 non-negotiables that I'm calling it at the moment, these cover the physical and the biochemical side of things. So, like your movement, your exercise, what you put in your mouth, so your food and your nutrition, etc. So, go over that in a bit. So, to the question. Right, here I am, got my back cave set up. Right, first question. How much should I eat before training first thing in the morning? I sometimes feel I'm not waking up early enough to have breakfast, snack. Okay, right. We could go different scenarios with that, but let's keep this simple and ask that question. So 6 a.m. is when Arvy's working out. Now, right, you don't need to have anything before exercise, right? Certainly at that time. If you're waking up early and you're hungry, that's a key sign that you have some kind of blood sugar issue. Right, maybe you didn't eat enough the day before, or your blood sugars are up and down, so when you wake up they come crashing down and you're hungry, right? Shouldn't really be like that. If it is, that tells us something else that's going on before. That's where we look, right? You have enough energy to exercise. Again, if you've got it into, let's say, your head that I can't work out without something, again, that's not an energy thing, it's a blood sugar thing. Because when you eat something, you don't just dramatically get this energy, because that food takes hours to get into your system once it goes through the process of digestion and absorption. It takes hours, depending on the type of food. Will depend on that rate of absorption. But what happens when you are feeling low in energy in the morning and you do have a little something, and it can just be a little bit of chocolate, is enough for you to go ding, right, I've got energy. It's enough. Your body's quite good when you give it what it wants. It's enough for your blood sugars to shoot back up to safe zone. You feel good, you feel energized, right? So if that's again, that says we got low cortisol in the morning. Okay, so people should have enough energy in the morning to get up. Cortisol gets us up in the morning, right? If you struggle to get up in the morning, you've probably got low cortisol. So that tells me other things that we need to look at. Right, so you don't need anything, Harvey, right? Crack on. Training shouldn't really take too long. Good meal afterwards. Perfect. Sets you up for the day. Right, next question. What are your thoughts on stand-up desks? I assume they have pros and cons in comparison to sitting. I always thought the problem wasn't whether one was sitting or standing, but rather whether one was moving, walking, etc. Right, stand-up desks are good, okay? They are useful. I do know that someone in here, there's probably more than one, has got one, and they are using them sometimes in their office. Now, sitting down, right, generally speaking, isn't good. It's pretty bad for the human body. Why? Shorten certain muscles, and when shorter muscles stay short, opposites get weak. And then over time, when you start doing other things, physical exercise, you can pick up injuries, right? Or you can pick up injuries from not even exercising, just sitting down too long and bending down to, pick up a shoe or your kid's parrot. More of that in a minute. So stand-up desks can take away that shortening of the muscles, right? Okay. Also, stand-up desks actually burn more calories because once you stood up, you need more muscles to stay up. So if weight loss and burning calories is a thing, stand-up desks are actually kind of a useful tool. So it's not that sitting down is bad. It's just it doesn't serve people because, generally speaking, a lot of people sit down for work because that's the way it is. You're in the office for 7, 8, 9, 10 hours. So you can obviously combat that, and that's where we talk about things like mobility and moving and exercise to alleviate those issues. So there isn't really a right or wrong. Stand up, sit down. Stand up ones are often fairly newish, but they do have benefits. I think the thing with the stand-up desks, from my knowledge, is you can get one and it's not like fixed. You kind of like change it, so it can be a sit-down one and then a stand-up one, because I know if I got one, I want to be standing up all the time. I want to still sit down a little bit. So I think there's definitely something to consider, and I personally think a lot more people should have them in their office. Right, next question. Yeah. Right, late evening snacking. Now, I know quite a lot about this because that was me many years ago. Situations where you're doing really well, you're focusing on your food and your exercise, and you've eaten well in the morning, you've taken some food to work, and you've had a meal in the evening, but then you sit down on the sofa and you watch telly and you've got the munchies. Or sometimes you could go to sleep, and wake up and you want some kind of food, something sweet, right? Now, I'm going to say that we're going to cover this more in the 10 non-negotiables, because that's a question that I get a lot, and I know about this question, that often that's a case of, right, let's look at what you're doing and then let's see what you're not doing, and then we can definitely pick out some things that you need to improve on, right? Okay, because people don't just have like sweet tooths or they become snackers in the evening. It's because they're lacking something. It could be that they're lacking certain food, like they've overtrained or they've undereaten during the day. Okay, or they're stressed. Stress kicks off cortisol and blood sugars. Again, that makes you hungry. So it could be like a few things. It's not like, right, oh, you got that, have you? Oh, just do this. It's not black and white like that. These sort of questions always come down to, it needs to be a one-to-one process, which is, the sort of thing that I would do, online, like this. So, but the reason I come up with this 10 non-negotiables is to give someone a first pass and go, what aren't you doing on here first? Okay, focus on that, and then if it's still there, now we need to go a little bit deeper, right? So we'll cover that a little bit more in a minute. And then the next one, you know, I've got like bulging stomach, you know, problem. So it's not a question that, but I know what this one is because I've spoken about this. And simply, right, your stomach, you could ask yourself, you're going to know if you've got a lot of belly fat around your stomach, right? Okay, you don't need me to tell that. I think, was it Arnie who said, if it wobbles, it's fat? Now, that's a different thing. If you've got like this stomach that's quite hard and distended and sticking out, that's something else. That tells me you've got a lot of inflammation in your gut, and this is where I would talk about what I call the faulty figure cycle, which could be anything to do with like your gut, your adrenals, and your blood sugars. But gut health is a really, really important thing, and this is something that I cover on the Reset 28 diet that I've been doing with people. Is that if you've got a stomach like that, there's a lot of inflammation going on, and that could have come from various places, and often, let's say, too much sugar over years, stress. There's loads of different things that it could be. It's not that black and white, but what you do have to do is go in there and clean it up. It won't just disappear. But unfortunately, what people do is they don't allow themselves the space to do that, and they keep putting things on top of what's already in there. So they get this like perpetual kind of like mess of stuff that's going on. So that's the short answer. That there's a lot of inflammation going on there, and you need to go in there and clean it. But you know, as you know, we've discussed on this personally that you've got to be in the right place to do it, because it takes a little bit of a commitment for a good few weeks. You know, you can't just cherry pick when you do things like the Reset 28. It's got to be at least a good 4 weeks of, right, I'm not going to have this in my diet. These are things that I need to start to introduce, and you commit to it. And it can be a little bit difficult for people, but it's going to be the best thing that sometimes people can do. So it's probably not really the answer that you wanted, but again, as you'll see in the 10 non-negotiables, are you doing too much of certain things and not enough of the other? Next question. Right. Struggling at the moment, migraines, poor sleep, feeling I might not be exactly depressed. I think that's what I'm supposed to say. But pretty low, motivation 0. I'm not like myself at all. Winter blues, lockdown fever. Okay, so as I said at the start, 3 areas that we look at with health: physical, biochemical, and emotional. And for the most part, we've normally only really talked about like physical and biochemical, you know, like moving, training, exercise, you know, nutrition. But then there's the other side, the emotional, you know, mental side. Now, there's a lot of people talking about mental health these days. Now, I'm not an expert, right, before we even go there, but I know a lot about it. Now, this is the way I see it, okay? And if you think I'm wrong, that's okay. We're not here to really kind of go into that. But obviously, mental health is a massive thing, right? A really important thing, and there's a lot of it out there. Always has been. It's just that there's more of it over the last few years because people are starting to, you know, come forward. Now, what I think that I see is that people are too quick to label themselves that they have mental health. Okay, there's a difference between you have some kind of mental health symptom, which is deeper, or you're at the surface where you're going through a period of feeling, let's say, you know, mentally challenged, emotionally challenged, right? Which is fine, okay, but that's okay to deal with. if you're doing these certain things, right? And from a physical perspective and a biochemical one, we can. And most people, I believe, would change a lot if they did them. Unfortunately, they're not, and they're running straight to the doctors, okay? Now, obviously, some people are further down the line, and this is where more of the emotional side of it comes into play. And although I can help with a small part of that, it's not something that I ever really kind of like talk about a lot. I would do it with certain clients, but I wouldn't talk about it outside because it's not my skill set. There's loads of other things that I can do, so I would refer that to someone else. But what I would say to someone is, well, if you're feeling like that, again, are you doing these things? Because if you're not, well, you need to be doing these things, because what you will find when you start doing them, you start feeling better, okay? So, physically and biochemically, I bet there are things, and it will be up to you to answer this question. Are you doing these things? Because if you're not, well, focus on one of them. That's probably the biggest or the weakest link. Then go away and do it, okay? And then the next one, and then the next one, and then assess, where you are. Because, at the moment we're in this situation where life isn't normal, and then there are people who are really not helping themselves, and they're not getting out, they're not moving, they're not making, let's say, a decent enough effort to go, right, I can't do that, but I could do this at home. And then they're putting things into their body more than they normally would that isn't serving them, okay? So I would say problems can sometimes be closer, but when I talk about these things, there'll be something on there you'll go, yes, I'm not doing that. So that's cool, that's great. Awareness is the first step. It's not a case of, well, go away and do it. It's like, let's take a better approach to that. Why do you think you're not doing it? What are the obstacles in the way? How could I help you? Okay, there's, as much as I can be quite direct with certain things, I absolutely have a lot of compassion and listen, but I won't listen to people, or I won't have compassion for people, rather, if they don't have compassion for themselves. What I mean by that is, if you don't give a shit about yourself, why should I give a shit, right? If you give a shit about yourself, you have absolutely got my attention. Anyway, hopefully the list will help, and then if there's something that you need help with, again, you just ask. Right, next question. I really love chocolate. I can't get enough of it. Where's the cheapest way to get it? No, that's not the question, sorry. It says chocolate. I know we have spoken about it, but I assume I am not the only one. Sorry, I'm laughing at my own joke. Okay, so we all like chocolate, or, well, most of us like chocolate. It's very rare that someone goes, I don't like chocolate, but if you don't like chocolate, fair enough. But most people like a bit of chocolate. I do, right? And it's okay, absolutely okay to eat chocolate. Chocolate doesn't make you fat. Too much chocolate does, right? And if you're going through periods where you feel like you're eating a bit too much than you should, and you don't know why, again, this comes down to, sometimes it's, what am I doing before a situation? What my blood sugar's doing? Emotionally, what's going on? Is work tough? Is there stuff going on at home? Okay. And that's a deeper thing, right? And that's not like, okay, it's not black and white. This is happening, go and do that. It's never like that with stuff like this. There's a lot more of a deeper thing going on that we need to explore, right? Okay, and again, that's not something we do on the gym floor, or standing outside of a gym, or in a muddy field at the moment. It's something that we can only do one-to-one, like here. But sometimes it could be a case of, well, I do still want the chocolate, but I know that doesn't really serve me. So on a Sunday, right, quite often I'll have some chocolate, but it got to the point where, I don't really need that, because a big massive bar like that wasn't that big. I was eating thinking, well, it's a cheat day, I'm going to have that, it's fine. But I was like, do you know what? There's like 2,000 calories I don't need. So I found something, right? And it's here. It's here for the video. It's not here because it's at hand's reach. It's these things, right? They're called, you've probably seen them, they're actually called Fibre One, which is what I started on with. It's basically like a chocolate brownie thing, but it's got fibre in it. Absolutely tastes really great. It's like, if you close your eyes, you'd think it was probably an actual brownie, but it's got added fibre, so that's really good. So you can't eat, well, you don't want to eat too many, otherwise that causes other problems. But these are like Asda's version, they're a lot cheaper. It tastes exactly the same, and I'm just a bit of a cheapskate, so I bought a cheaper version. And I have some of them now on a Sunday, and it hasn't really kind of like made any difference, but I just know that I've probably had about 1,800 calories less, and my digestive system has benefited. So just a little tip there. Again, you don't have to do that, but I've found these things that are useful. Not as a staple, don't treat it like that, because there's still some sugars in there. But if it's one of them times where you think, oh, I really want to have chocolate and I probably shouldn't have it, but I still want it, kind of works, right? Oh, that's it. No more questions. Right, see you later. Oh no, hang on, I've got something else. I was going to tell you about these. This list, 10 non-negotiables is what I'm calling it at the moment. I'll write it out into some kind of PDF, and it can be used with the online people at whatever level they're using, just as a little checklist, and obviously one-to-ones. And it's stuff that you've heard before, right? But sometimes we need things written out, so we can just have this little check up from the neck up and go, right, tick, 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 tick. I'm not doing that, right? Next week, that's my focus. Okay, now it doesn't matter who you are, where you want to get to, what the goal is. Whatever approach you take, or let's say whatever successful approach that actually exists on this planet, these things will be in there. Okay, so the first one is, now it might come across that there's a lot to do, but actually, when I program certain things into, like I say, a weekly program, actually it's not. As people who've been using the online stuff, they can get a lot of this stuff from the movement and exercise point of view in 36 minutes. It can be longer, but it can be that short. So, are you doing mobility work, right? Because most people don't. And if you're sitting down for too long during the day, you absolutely should be. And, if you're getting older, again, you absolutely should be. It's something that I appreciate a lot more now, and has helped many of you, because I've been doing it. So I thought, well, this is a good idea. And, as I said earlier, only today, someone nearly didn't do their PT session because they had a bad back. 5 minutes later, it's actually 3 minutes, they changed their mind, and I've texted them about an hour ago, and it's gone. It's gone. It's not always like that, but sometimes it can be that often we kind of hold ourselves back because we think pain is real. Sometimes it's not. It's just this trigger that our head is being told. So mobility, number one. Number two is like flexibility. That's different to mobility. Those, don't get them too mixed up. They are totally different. Mobility is more what you do pre-workout, keep your joints moving well, and flexibility is how well are your what's the lengthening of your muscles. Okay, so if you sit down a lot, you lack flexibility because your muscles have shortened. Okay, and then vice versa, it can then have a mobility issue on your lower back. So they're different, but they come together. Okay, number three, and then number 3 and 4 are kind of a little bit dependent on the individual and the goal, but they absolutely should be in there somewhere with various people, and that's lists. So low intensity, steady state type training. So a lower intensity working out, walking, slower running, cycling, you know, more cardio type stuff. Now, unfortunately, a lot of people use cardio exercise but turn it into anaerobic. Okay, that's kind of where it goes a little bit wrong. Okay, and I'm not going to go too much into this because this is a completely different subject. So that's number 3, lower intensity exercise. Number 4 is higher intensity exercise. Okay, a lot of people do too much of this, some people do none. We don't need a lot, we only need a small amount for your body to adapt, right? It's creating enough stress on your body that doesn't do damage but is enough for your body to go, I didn't like that, I'm going to do something and adapt to make sure it doesn't come back. Only it does, because we get better and we push ourselves even further. So when you get an exercise plan that has got mobility, stretching in, lower intensity stuff, higher intensity stuff, and then the last thing, strength training, you have the ultimate approach to your workout plan. And those 5 things can be done in one workout. It can be spread out, but they are absolutely possible to do in one workout. And that's what we're doing with a lot of the guys online and the one-to-ones on the app and the stuff that they're doing on their own. So you ask yourself, am I missing any of these things, right? Because then if you are, okay, well that's a certain thing that I need to start adding in to my weekly regime, you know, somehow. Okay, and creating the space for it to happen. Right, and then we start getting more into, so that's the physical side, and then more of like the biochemical side, and it's like, are you hydrated? Are you drinking enough water? Okay, you know, I say this a lot because people struggle with it. You know, we can talk about metabolism. Can we speed it up? Don't know about that, but you can absolutely speed it down if you are dehydrated by only a few percent. Everything slows down. Okay, so water is absolutely essential. And then number 7 is protein. Again, something that I'll talk about a lot. You know, it's really, really important. It's not just about, you know, muscles. If you have a diet that's higher in protein, it should be the number 1 macronutrient out of protein, carbs and fats, is that you actually burn more calories because of the way it works with like thermogenesis and how it breaks down food. So eating a diet higher in protein actually ends up with a net of less, if that kind of makes sense. I can talk about that more on an individual basis, but essentially you should be getting enough protein in, and, you know, 1.5 grams per kilo ideally. So if you weigh 60 kilos, you know, you're looking at 90, but in some cases you want to still be aiming for 2, so between 90 and 120 for someone who weighs 60 kilos is going to be something that's only going to benefit people. You know, I've had so many people who have struggled with food cravings and overeating because they've had low protein. Then when they've reported back to me, because they've been hitting this protein goal every day at that level, they're like, I'm not as hungry as I used to be. And I didn't tell you to take anything out. Your body just kind of calmed the fuck down and says, I don't want to keep eating that. It can actually be that simple. And then number 8 is kind of like this amalgamation of 3, where we talk about veggies, fibre and nutrients. A lot of people don't eat enough veggies. When you do, your fibre goes up, and then when you eat a lot more veggies, your nutrients go up. Areas that people kind of forget about because they're too stuck with, you know, water and protein and, oh, what's the best exercise for my abs, you know. But the issue we have a lot of the time is that, let's say someone comes to me and they want to lose weight, we can pretty much say that they probably don't eat too well and their lifestyle isn't serving them. So if you take food away, you're only going to knacker that system even more. So sometimes we've got to go in there, feed the body up a little bit, get all the nuts and bolts in the right place to then put someone in a calorie deficit. Okay, so number 8 will just show up a lot for people. it's something that people need to work on. It's not easy. It takes time for people to lay down the foundations for this stuff with the nutrition. It can take you years, but it will take you even longer if you don't put conscious effort into going, what's the weakest area of my diet right now? Let's spend quite a lot of time on doing that, right? Okay, and number 9, it's like fats, fairly complicated subject. It's more about quality over quantity. If you're on a low fat diet, that's absolutely shit anyway. Don't be that person, because that's going to cause you problems. You need fat. Your body's made up of fat. Your cells are made up of fat. Okay. What I would say to someone, to keep it simple, is have a mixture, because there are different fats: unsaturated, saturated, mono, polyunsaturated, omega-6, omega-3. So different natural sources is a good place to start, right? And then we can look into it, because if you have too much omega-6 over omega-3, you are now putting yourself in, although they could be healthy, you're putting yourself in a position where you create more inflammation in the body, which is something that we discussed earlier. Omega-6 contains something that converts to one of the acids, which is responsible for inflammation. So keep it simple to start. Get a foundation. It's just like exercise. Let's get you walking, let's get you moving, then let's start doing some squats and dips and press ups. Okay, and now let's make it more specific to you. Same with nutrition. Let's get that going. Good, that's a habit that you seem to be working with now. Let's just tweak it a little bit. Okay. And then the last one it's the last one for a reason. It's sleep. Okay, obviously sleep kind of sort of fixes or breaks most things, but what you'll find is if you've got the first 9 into place, sleep starts to naturally improve. Now, when we talk about sleep, we are essentially talking about what you can control, okay, and what you can influence. If you've got babies going on, it's a little bit different. If there's stuff going on in your life, that's different. But what I would say is there will still be things in this list that you're not doing, which is also making that even worse. So how can we get that small amount of sleep that you do get, but deeper and more quality? Right, that will do, because that's probably gone on quite a while. I'll produce this list up so it's available for people. If you've got any questions, pop them below. Thanks for listening, whether you've popped in and out now or you're going to read back later. But keep this up, keep asking your questions. There's going to be people out there who thought, yeah, I'm glad they asked that question, because that was me. But if that's you, ask your question, because if you're thinking that, other people are thinking that, and sometimes you got to go first. It'll help you and it'll help others, and this place is about teamwork. Anyway, I am thinking about names for this little fella. He's been sat there for a reason. We've got a few, like Pikamu is what I come up with the other day. Simon, but I don't think that one's going to work. So if you've got any names for a parrot, please tell me, pop them below, and I'll see you soon.